Hello folks and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about some personal tips for artistic growth and development, particularly when it comes to coming up with drawing and setting up those ideas for those drawings. I know some of my last videos have been getting a little heavy, with some of the topics and stuff, so I want to keep this a little more lightweight and free flowing. So these are 6 essential tips to help get your pen to the paper and get you moving, get you drawing, and of course have a little bit of fun along the way. If you're new here, my name is Tyler Redlin. I've been an artist and an instructor now in a professional capacity for the last 15 years. I've had the pleasure of working on big games, small games, and a variety of small personal projects, and I would hope today I can convey some of that past experience into drawing some fun characters. So with that said, let's get into this. Well, I don't know about you guys, but as a creator, one of the most difficult aspects of creating is simply just starting, right? There can be endless lists of projects, of ideas, and priorities. Simply knowing or having a direction, a sense of direction on where to go and what to kind of work on can be absolutely daunting, right? Even crippling for someone that is just into drawing and into painting. And so one way that I do try to circumvent this issue and to kind of get around that is simply to set small manageable goals, outline maybe like a prompt list, for myself, and simply plan ahead. I'm not talking like even a week. I'm not even saying plan a month or 6 months in advance next year. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like, hey, I want to draw today and I got a blank page or a blank document right here on Photoshop. What is a great way that I can just get going, that I can almost hit the ground running when I put my pen, to the screen? For me, and as you can kind of see here with this example today, I just kind of created a brief outline of what I wanted to do. These were the Shell Guard Sentinels, or the Pincer Paladins. You could think of your goal or your outline as an elevator pitch. It can be really simple. It could even be 2 words to a sentence. That's all I'm doing. And then I can kind of come up with smaller little themes within that larger one, right? So like, here's the stealth guy. This one is the brute. This one is the long-range attacker. This one might be the medic. This one is the magic caster, all within that one theme. And because lately I've been so hesitant in just drawing, because I just needed some time away from it, I haven't done it in a while, up to like the last 2 weeks, and I haven't certainly created an original character in years. I've been so focused on just grinding out my production work, in games, which is mostly environments and props. I really don't get hired super frequently for my character work. There was just always hesitation, right? There was always a little bit of that creative friction that was just kind of giving me excuses and building up to not draw. So all I'm simply doing now is like, hey, let's come up with a prompt list. Let's go at it. And not only is it going to help get you started, but it will help maintain focus as well as track your progress, right? So that's a simple way you can improve your drawing and your creativity. Plan ahead, create an outline, list out a set of prompts for yourself. All right, so now that brings us to number 2. And another little simple hack and trick I like to do is to kill my blank pages, right? So we have a list of ideas in our head, right? We have our list. We have still a blank page in front of us. Well, this is exactly what you're seeing on screen now, right? I draw one of the ideas pretty quickly, really rough, right? I just block in the major shapes and proportions. We'll talk a little bit more on that in a minute. And then essentially I just duplicate this, right? I copy and paste it as many times as I can sensibly fit them on the page. And so therefore, instead of a blank page, after 4 or 5 minutes, I have already got an entire page drafted out in advance. I simply just need to lower the opacity and begin drawing over the original, one by one. And this is a trick, and if not a hack, that I've done for years in game design when I do concepts for studios. I like to just lay out my entire day based off of a single idea or goal, because that's often how they came in, and then therefore I know I'm just basically filling in the blanks for the rest of the afternoon. It takes some thinking out of it. It takes some friction out of it, which again is something I highly value, is just removing friction between the idea and getting it out, in some sort of form. So by drawing, of course, these initial shapes, it allows you to reinforce themes, it allows you to establish a sensible design language and measure it consistently among all your ideas. It's just perfect for establishing these language of shapes, right? And I'm talking, if you're new to drawing, the squares, the circles, and the triangles, right? Your three basic primitive shapes. And what's amazing about these is they each can mean and be associated with different things. Circles are generally considered softer and more friendly and passive and peaceful, right? Squares are sturdy, they're very strong, and triangles are very aggressive. They're a little bit more dynamic. And so you can combine these, right? You can just combine these in an infinite number of ways to create anything. And that's what I'm doing to establish a consistent design language for these crabs, right? They look very different than, let's say, owls or otters, right? There is a certain kind of proportion and rhythm to the way I'm arranging these shapes that they kind of, come off in a very consistent way. Now, how these can be exaggerated and how you can alter the proportions, that's where the creativity comes in. That's where the fun really can happen. Is like once you say, hey, I'm going to dominantly use triangles here, and I'm going to use just a little bit of, squares or circles, depending on the type of character. That can really play up how strong that design is and reinforce what you want to showcase of that character's attributes. Oh, this one's strong, or this one's aggressive and much quicker, And that's going to lead me to my third big tip for this video, is to not judge individual drawings. I create almost everything nowadays in sets. Yes, this is a habit that was built from just years of working for studios, but I love it because you know why? I don't have to judge these individual ones, even though on the job they were always judged for personal work, like these characters. I could have 7 of these completely bomb, and I still have my one guy, my awesome little crab guy that could be left, and he could be working perfectly fine. You take your wins. But it is important, of course, to remember that just one bad drawing doesn't define your overall creative ability. And it is okay to have some bad ones. And that, within this set of drawings, like these 8 figure designs, each piece is, part of that larger set. And maybe this set is part of a larger collection. I just know it can be a real kind of creative trap just to put so much emphasis and so much weight that rests on one sort of drawing. So therefore, it can be okay, right, for these to be bad. And that's what I'm giving you guys permission to make some bad drawings. As long as you're creating enough that you'll eventually, right, come up with a good one. That's kind of what's important here. So yes, I'm focusing on overall progression of these, not on individuals. I can always circle back, and that's what I'm going to be doing in these mid stages here, is coming back and redrawing, right? I'm redrawing the designs, I'm adding another layer of detail, and I'm refining some of these characteristics of these characters. Alright, so as a brief recap now, right? Plan ahead, set some goals and prompts, kill your blank pages through lots of quick iterations. I have 3 more tips for today, and before we proceed, I just want to let you guys know, if you do subscribe to the newsletter at brushsauceacademy.com, I give away lots of the show notes, I give away freebies, and of course let you guys know on any kind of discounts that are going to be happening, which I do feel that with the summer on the horizon, I do think we're going to be running some sales. So with that said, let's move on to number 4, and that is, of course, building good long-term habits to help your drawing. Of course, you hear everyone say, yes, regular practice is great for improving long-term, but what are some few specific things that we could do? What are some few specific things I'm doing by practicing over the last several weeks, just drawing loads of characters like this. What are some things that I'm building for the long term with this? One of them is, of course, to establish a process. Now, you could just almost look anywhere, like Pinterest, ArtStation, Instagram. People are sharing their process all the time nowadays, which I think is awesome. The transparency with creators is fantastic, and there's a lot we can learn for those that want to. So for me, like, no matter what I'm drawing or what I'm designing, whether it's a character like these, whether it's a prop or an environmental set like a piece of architecture, I'm going to follow the same major 4 steps. The first one, of course, will be establishing a foundation, made of the silhouette from forms and volumes, right? These all kind of start very spherical with little bits of triangles. I kind of talked about that. That's always my first step. And then, of course, that's refined to set up the shape design language, right? How I'm creating a sense of visual hierarchy within the design itself. So maybe that's a matter of using big, medium, and small shapes of triangles versus circles or squares, using big, medium, and small lines. Maybe it's sharp lines, maybe it's straight lines, maybe it's curved lines, right? There's so many different ways to do this. But again, it's the rhythm and how we're setting these up intently that will establish a sense of design with a consistent design language. I always do that as step number 2. And the third major step that I kind of tackle with my own process is establish major themes, which is a little bit different if I'm talking props and characters. For characters, right, I'm going to push the gesture. Maybe it's the expression in their eyes or their eyebrows or their mouth to kind of get some of the characteristics to kind of shine through. Maybe we could alter the pose a little bit to bring forth a little more of their own personality. With something like a building, if it were something like, oh, this is a Lotus theme building or this is Art Deco, I'm going to double down on those sort of attributes at this stage. And then finally, what I'm going to be segueing into next would be just details. Details are last. That's the 4th stage. It's the final stage. It's always, no matter what I'm doing, the last priority. Too many students, I know that I see myself, love to just jump into detail head first, and without that good structuralization that happens at the earlier stages that I mentioned in steps 1 and 2, all the details in the world won't make a good design, won't establish a good drawing. So this is a process that works for me. If you've got a different process, I'd love to know, of course, below. But for the most part, from what I've seen for a lot of top creators, it's always just some variation on these major 4 steps. So I build a habit, right, out of the process. And like I said at the beginning of this, part of that is repetition, right? You got to get the reps in to build the improvements. So that's why, like, with this, I'm just pacing myself. It is, after all, for fun, but I say, like, okay, like, let's do the first part of this process on day 1, right? Let's say 90 minutes. I'm just going to rough out all the characters, kind of come up with the ideas. Session 2, or day 2, right? I'm going to just spend another 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, and just kind of overdraw them, right? Refine some of the details and some of the particulars of the characters. And then day 3, I could add any remaining kind of details, maybe add a little bit of shading or coloring, and that can wrap it up. So I kind of pace myself out very evenly with very specific steps, day 1, day 2, day 3, and right, half the week I've got a number of drawings already completed, and therefore, just by practicing things that I'm either good at or that I want to improve upon. In my case, I'm trying to fill in a weakness. I've been mostly an environment guy my whole life, so I'm kind of filling in a weakness, but you could double down and just practice on one of your strengths. And that's what I'm doing at the latter half of the week. I'm going into 3D Coat, and I'm just practicing sculpting, and I'm sculpting various types of architecture, and I'm learning that process. Again, so it'll be very repeatable on jobs. And the last little kind of side habit that I'm trying to instill with these on the drawing side of it is straights against curves. I'm always kind of measuring, how sharp and how strong or how light and linear a line is. Different lines at different line widths, and whether they are straights and whether they will drastically change the quality of a design. These are really minute little things, but collectively they will add up to influence the greater impact of that picture. If you have something that's all soft or all curvy, it's going to look bland, right? It's not going to feel dynamic at all. But if you have some straights thrown in, it's going to make it feel much more active, right? Much more fluid and dynamic even. It's going to just have a little bit of contrast, and that contrast is going to allow me to implement a lot of interest in terms of like visual interest into the picture. So it'll make it feel like a multi kind of dimensional idea. It'll feel a little bit more like a multi-layered idea rather than something just kind of quickly whipped up using the same kind of marks, the same kind of shapes, right? The same kind of lines. So there's 3 habits that I'm kind of constantly working on. I'd love to know, again, what are some of the things you guys are working on. But let's get into number 5, and that is just embracing intuitive adjustments. And when I'm referring to this, with maybe like this particular set of drawings, is that I'm letting go some of the conventional references of like crustacean characters, for example. I had my reference page. I think it was great. But I'm not trying to limit myself to that. Again, part of that is not taking it so seriously that I'm going to overthink it and overwork it. I just want to get into a flow state where I'm literally having a lot of fun with this. And this is a lesson that's kind of goes ways back, that I kind of learned the hard way, and that even sent me on this path that I am on today with this. I mean, earlier in my career, when I kind of wanted to work for Magic the Gathering and everything, I thought it was all about realistically painting and realistically illustrating. I would spend my weeks designing hyper rendered characters. I was focusing so much on the technical side of it, being able to produce a pretty picture. And I there was value in that, right? I was building technical skill, but at the same time, I did learn over this whole process and throughout my career, I didn't enjoy a lot of that. At least when it came to characters, I do a little bit more realistic environments occasionally, but I learned that like I just did not enjoy creating characters and creatures at that like hyper realism sort of level, and it kind of deterred me away from wanting to just do character work in general. But I thought that was the only option. I never even really thought, like 15 years ago, that like, hey, you could just do your stylized characters. You could have fun with it. You could really push and exaggerate shapes and forms, and have fun with the different types of detail and the shading you could do. Never occurred to me. And, and it turns out I do. I enjoy this stuff a lot more. And that was something I had to learn the hard way. And so by just kind of embracing now these more intuitive adjustments, rather than just me focusing on it being entirely real or entirely accurate, I can allow myself more kind of creative expression, more creative freedom, and it's just making me want to draw more and more, because I'm not kind of getting focused on like those smaller little things. And what's awesome about this, right, is that our own sort of unique biases from kind of taking in a sheet of reference like this can impact the overall drawing. These interesting mistakes that I am making and choosing not to fix can contribute, to my overall style and development. And instead of kind of fighting that grain, I'm just kind of going with it. Accuracy is great. It has its place, but I am at that point now that where I can recognize some of these mistakes, some of these deviations from the reference or how I'm pushing a shape or form can add to my picture or add to my idea, and it can give it a little bit of a unique visual punch. Because my work, does stiffen up when I get more realistic with it. So yeah, I'm not going for technically, anatomically accurate crabs and crustacean races here. I'm just kind of like, whatever goes, goes. I'm just playing more with shapes, proportions, patterns, and rhythms, right? Elements of design. And that is okay. You can go either side. Just figure out what you kind of enjoy doing the most. Which leads me to my last tip for today, is that you gotta make it fun, right? Like I said, so much of this craft can be, a lot of pressure. So much of it can be taken very, very seriously, and parts of it do. It's going to depend, of course, on that season of life you're in. But don't let it cripple you like it did me. Like it did for me for years, where it's like, oh, I got to do these realistic characters, but I don't enjoy them. I do enjoy quirky characters. I do enjoy fun ones. I do enjoy really expressive ones. And so I'm going to create those. So do whatever you can to keep the process enjoyable for yourself, right? Because it's not so much always about that end goal. Like, we do have to enjoy the moment to moment with creating, and that's ultimately what as I've learned, is what makes it sustainable. It is what allows you to avoid those artistic burnouts. So yeah, there are some deviations in like how I'm approaching these characters, for example, particularly to at like these later stages. But I am, from page to page, maybe not so much design on here. I'm allowing myself to play with different, slightly different approaches in how I'm coloring or how I'm shading or how I'm going to ink it even. And I'm allowing a little bit of play, with that style. Having some, inviting some element of play into your drawing, into your designs, or maybe in your painting is a very healthy thing. It doesn't always have to be super structured or regimented. For me in this case, right, it was just like a simple, very vague prompt list, and now I can interpret it and have my fun. So yes, don't lose sight. Celebrate the fact that you are creating and celebrate the act of creating itself rather than kind of focusing on that fixed end result. Of course, if you can, side tip, if you can find, right, something you enjoy and it is something maybe the market needs and you're pretty decent at it, that is a sweet spot for creating a piece of art that is potentially financially marketable. Again, it doesn't always have to be about the money. It shouldn't always be the money about the first. But like, if you wanted to monetize your craft in any sort of way, find where those three groups, right, overlap. But guys, let me know below if I missed anything. Of course, by implementing these strategies, you can, of course, push and enhance your style. You can keep drawing and creating really effectively. And of course, you can grow as an artist and creator. Guys, I do have links below for everything you might potentially need. And yeah, let me know what you guys want to see more of on the channel. And I'll catch you guys next time.